All right, we'll begin. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board Town Hall, mailing to the officially designated newspapers a list of the meeting dates annually, indicating that this meeting would take place on Monday, April 19th, 2021, via Zoom webinar format. Okay.
Roll call.
Jody Sharma,
Here.
Steve Toger,
Here.
Wolfgang Torres,
Here.
Amy Lawrence,
Here.
Shanju Harjani,
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Jessica Glatt,
Here.
Chairman Joseph Steinberg.
Here. All right, before we begin tonight's meeting, there are a couple of things that I would like to do. First, as I think some of you know, a complaint was filed against the zoning board challenging our denial of the New Jersey energy case. That was the case of the request for the establishment of a gasoline station and a convenience store where the old gas station burned down about 6 or 7 years ago. Maybe it was longer than that, on the corner of Vauxhall Road and Millburn Avenue. Unfortunately, our attorney, Rob Simon, has a conflict and will be unable to represent our zoning board in that complaint. By the way, for those of you who don't know this, when a complaint is filed against a zoning board challenging a denial, the case is not heard anew. It is heard by the court on the record below. And the resolution of the board is a very important piece of evidence that comes before the court. Now, since Rob cannot represent us in that matter, we need to get a substitute attorney. Now, for those of you who were at the last meeting, you know that Jonathan Drill, who is one of the co-authors now of the Cox volume, is representing our board in connection with the application for the roof of the building, installment of some equipment on the roof of the building on the corner of Millburn Avenue and Main Street. And I took it upon myself to, after discussing the matter with Rob Simon, to call Jonathan Drill to ask him if he had a conflict or if he was willing to represent our board. And he was very happy to represent the board. Now, I think that I have the authority to retain him, but just to be totally safe, I'm going to ask if there's a motion from the members of the board here tonight to retain in place of Rob Simon, Jonathan Drill on that case, the New Jersey Energy Corp case. Is there such a motion?
So
So,
moved.
sorry, Joe, quick question. Since I recused myself on that matter, does that mean also that I do not vote on?
Exactly.
Okay.
You should not vote, correct. Jessica, did I hear, did I
Yeah,
see you
I'll
make
make
a
a
motion?
Joe, can I just add, just so the board is aware? So this is an action that has been commenced in the Superior Court in Essex County. And as a result of that, John would be representing the board in defending the determination of the board as memorialized in the resolution that the board adopted. Thanks.
So
Thank you.
in that regard, only members who voted on the application are going to vote on the attorney? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Eileen, I
Anybody can
believe that's
vote for the
appropriate.
attorney
So our
except
alternates,
except
will not
Wolfgang, who recused on the entire matter.
and I don't know that the alternates voted.
I did not on
Yeah,
that.
they were not members of the board at that time. I think Steve.
Me neither. Want to second Jessica's motion?
Thank you. Well, we
You
have
want-
a motion that's been made and seconded. Eileen, would you call the roll?
Jody Sharma,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Jessica Glad,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. Okay, now that complaint, by the way, Eileen Davitt has concluded, whether she's right or wrong.
No, we're not even, don't even start, don't even.
No, it's Joe,
Just-
there should not be any discussion about
Okay,
that case at this point.
okay. Eileen, you will talk to our attorney, yes?
Yes,
Fine. Okay. Secondly, I'm going to ask if you can bring in to the meeting both, I guess we should do them one at a time. Mr. Rao, who has a case tonight on,
I'm going to also bring over his architect, if that's okay. So should I bring both over, or what do you think?
you can bring them both over.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Lau. I think you're muted. You want to unmute? I think you are muted. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, and Mr. James,
Good
welcome
evening.
back to the board.
Thank you.
I want to explain something to you, Mr. Lau. I cannot participate in the case involving your application. I have a conflict of interest. So it turns out that the only members of the board who can participate in the matter are our two, we have two missing members who can't be at tonight's meeting. So there are three people of the board who cannot participate in your hearing, which means that you still need, for a C variance, a majority of the board, but it's going to be 4 out of 6 instead of 4 out of 7. So you have the alternative, and I'm going to give you the alternative, to take a step back and have your case heard on another evening. Eileen, I don't know when we can get Mr. Lau on next.
Well, and also.
Can I
it's not so much the
clarify,
C, it's the
please?
D variance, which is.
Yeah,
really
so,
not bonus.
I'm sorry, this is the one with the D variance.
Correct.
I'm sorry. One of your requested variances is what is known as a D variance. That requires a supermajority, which means 5 affirmative votes. You're only going to have 6 people maximum on that case because we have, I'm stepping down. I would be the 7th member. So you would need 5 votes out of 6. And I'm going to give you the opportunity, and you don't have to decide now. You can decide when your case is called, which I think is the 4th or 5th case tonight. You can decide at that time. If you wish to have the matter heard on a different night, when is the next time he can be heard, Eileen?
The next probably would be June 7th.
Would be when?
June 7th.
June 7th. Now, you would not have to renotice or republish. You would not have to send notices to your neighbors. We can make an announcement tonight. But you, again, you should discuss this matter with Mr. James and with your family and make a decision as to whether you wish to go for it tonight. Again, you're going to need a supermajority of votes, 5 out of 6. Will you now bring in Mr. Wilf, please?
Okay. And Jonathan, you're their architect as well, correct?
Yes, I am.
Mr. James, you're going to be involved in the Wilf matter as well, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Is that Corey Wilf?
Hi, I'm Corey Wilf. Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you. I wanted to explain something to you here at the beginning of the evening. You have a case on tonight, and unfortunately, 2 members of the zoning board could not make tonight's meeting. Their place is being taken by the 2 alternates for the board, so that's not a problem. But Jessica Glatt has concluded that she cannot sit on your case, which means that you have C variances that you need, so-called C as in Charlie variances that require a simple majority. But instead of having a full board of 7 people, you're going to have only a board of 6 people. And you're going to need 4 affirmative votes. But it's 4 out of 6, not 4 out of 7.
Oh, we
You
understand.
do
Okay.
not have to make a decision now. Your case will be called in due course later on this evening. And you can tell us at that time whether you want to proceed tonight or you do not want to proceed tonight. If you do not want to proceed, Eileen, can they also be heard on June, what is it, 7th? 7th,
Yes.
is it? Yes. Your case will be carried to June 7th, but you will not have to renotice and you will not have to put your notification in the newspaper again, nor will you have to notify your 200-foot neighbors. You can discuss this matter privately. You can discuss it with Mr. James, who's your architect. And when your case is called in due course, and it's the last case on the agenda tonight, you can let us know at that time whether you want to proceed tonight or not.
Great.
But I wanted
Thank
to
you.
give you time to think about it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So
Yes, Mr. James.
I have a couple of questions about both of these cases since it's going to be a reduced number of board members.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Excuse me, I'm a little hoarse tonight. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you better.
I just had a couple of questions for you since both of these cases, Wilf and Lau, have a reduced number of board members. Can we start the case? And if we decide not to take a vote, would it be taken up by the full board at the next hearing?
Mr. Simon?
Certainly, it's up to the board whether they want to proceed that way. You're certainly permitted to proceed that way, with the one caveat that, of course, it would require under the municipal land use law for the quote unquote missing board member or members to review a transcript or watch the Zoom video or listen to an audio tape. But provided that they're willing to do so and in fact do so, then they would be eligible to vote. So the 2 schools of thought are whether you want to allow the applicant to proceed this evening with their case without going to, potentially without going to a formal vote, or whether the board would prefer just to wait and hear the case all at once, if that's the way that the applicant wants to proceed.
And in either case,
All
would it
AAA
be,
members should know that
would
we
it
are
be
here for them when they
postponed
need.
to the 7th of June? Excuse me, yes.
Yeah, I believe, Mr. James, that Ms. Davitt stated that should either or both applications be carried, they would be carried without any further notice to the June 7th meeting of the board.
Okay, so there's no way that they could be carried to the next meeting by starting.
There's no way what?
That they could be carried to the next meeting of the board by
That's
starting.
correct.
Okay,
So you can discuss this matter with both of your clients and let us know when the case is called.
okay, we'll do that.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We now are going to go back to the agenda. And the first matter on the agenda are the minutes that Eileen sent out for the minutes of the meeting of March the 15th, 2021. If you were not at that meeting, please do not vote and do not make a motion or second the motion to adopt those minutes. But if there was anyone here who was at that meeting on the 15th of March, I'll first ask if there are any additions or corrections of those minutes. I hear none. Is there a motion to
Actually, just
adopt?
Eileen, I had sent you an email just with one minor correction,
Yes,
and that's in, I think, line 240. The applicant's name was misspelled with a V rather than a W. It was a minor thing, but so I should point it out.
did you get that email, Eileen?
The applicant's name, that's 28 Parkview?
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
I got it.
Line 204, thank you.
Thank you. Yep, I have that. Okay,
With that correction, I would move approval of minutes of March 15th, 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Raise your hand so I can see it. All opposed? The motion is carried unanimously, and the minutes of March the 15th, 2021 are approved. The next matter that we're handling tonight are 3 memorializations which have been prepared by our attorney, and they have been circulated to the board members. The first is the Solomon case on Wyoming Avenue in Millburn. If you did not participate in that case, I'm going to ask that you not participate in the adoption of the memorializing resolution. But for those of you who did participate in this is the case involving the basketball court, proposed basketball court in the backyard. Is there a motion to adopt the memorializing resolution prepared by our attorney in that case?
I move adoption of the case.
All right, Steve Toger moves adoption of the memorializing resolution in 401 Wyoming Avenue, Millburn. Is there a second?
A second.
Jody Sharma,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutores,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. The second case is Wu, which was a denial, also 28 Parkview Drive in Millburn. That matter was also reduced to a memorializing resolution by our attorney. Is there someone who would make a motion to adopt the memorializing resolution in the Wu case, which is 28 Parkview Drive in Millburn. Is there a motion to adopt that memorializing resolution?
Move adoption of memorializing resolution for calendar number 3780-21.
Second.
Wolfgang Soteris made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Jody
Jody Charma seconded it.
Sharma,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutoris,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. The last memorializing resolution for this evening is Brian Sol Pietro. This is calendar 3781-21. And this is a memorializing resolution. This case was approved. Is there a second, is there a motion to adopt the memorializing resolution in the Sol Pietro case?
I'll make a motion to adopt
Amy
3781-21.
Lawrence makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Wolfgang Tsuris seconded it.
Jody Sharma,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutoris,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. Okay, we are now going to the applications. The first application is calendar 3768-20. Now, the only people who can participate in this is 10 Alexander Lane. This has been before the board previously. Eileen, do we know?
Yeah, so here's the situation with Scoris. They appeared for the first time on December 7th, 2020. So we did not have our alternates at that time.
That's right.
So they came back 2 times, but no testimony was printed. They were carried both times till tonight's date. So Amy and Chandru would not be able to vote on this because they were not members of the board in December, unless they
So who is,
previous Zoom
who is-
meetings.
Steve Toger is available for this case?
Jody, Steve, Wolfgang, Jessica, Joe, 5 of you.
Okay,
And they would need 3. They would need 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5, right. All right, who's appearing on behalf of the applicant here?
Samantha, should I bring James over as well? Jim Weber, is he with this as well, or no?
He's just gonna watch.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Samantha Alfonso of Dempsey and Sheehan on behalf of the applicants, Spiro and Lauren Scoris. If I may take a moment to speak with them about the vote question. Since we
Sure.
only have 5 people, if I may take just a moment to speak with them.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. The applicants have decided to move forward with the
Okay,
application
fine.
this evening. Oh. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, yes.
Thank you. The applicants would like to go ahead this evening.
Okay.
That's fine. Proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Eileen Davitt just mentioned, after the last hearing before the board, the applicants took the opportunity to scrutinize the plans, consider alternatives, and focus their experts on the concerns presented by the board members. They were able to reduce the total lot and rear yard lot coverages by reducing the size of the patio on 3 sides from 3 feet to 2 feet to allow for a functional patio around the pool while also reducing the footprint of the proposal and bolstering the landscape plan to add additional plantings and variety. The reductions in coverage bring the proposed coverages very close to that permitted in the zone. The lot coverage is now proposed at 36.7%, where 35% is permitted. That's only 1.7% over the permitted rather than the 2.6% originally presented. The rear yard lot coverage is now proposed at 22%, where 20% is permitted. A total of 2% over rather than the 3.9% originally presented. The applicants propose to improve the rear yard of their existing single-family home and outdoor leisure area with a permitted patio to surround the existing pool and significant buffer and aesthetic landscaping. The extent to which the property may be improved as a single-family home is limited due to the location of the lawfully existing home and the hammerhead driveway, which is necessary to allow for appropriate access to the ground floor attached garages, and the location of the lawfully existing pool, as well as the narrow and deep shape of the lot. The applicants suffer significant practical difficulties and hardship in improving their home while complying with the ordinances regulating total coverage and rear yard coverage because of those described existing conditions and the lawfully existing structures thereon. Although the applicants sharpened their pencils and worked to reduce the coverage, the functionality of the patio requires additional coverage over that which is permitted. The pool and proposed patio are of standard average size in the neighborhood. And if I may, I prepared an exhibit, which I have updated now with a Google image. If I may share my screen with the board.
Samantha, can you
Yes.
can I interrupt you for a second?
Absolutely.
So is there going to be somebody providing testimony in support of this exhibit that you're about to show?
Yes.
Okay, so you just want to, do we want to introduce it and mark it when that witness is ready to present their testimony, or?
If I could introduce it now, I would like to show the board and discuss the impacts of that, but if you would rather have
I
us.
think we can let council introduce it.
Okay.
Thank you. Would you like to mark this as A1?
Eileen, are there any other exhibits that have been marked to date?
I'm checking real quick.
I believe the only exhibits previously provided were plans.
Okay.
Yes, I don't have anything.
Thank you. We'll mark this as Exhibit A1. And this is a Google Maps image of 10 Alexander Lane and the surrounding neighborhood, showing all of the pools that we were able to locate within that area. It's about 300 square feet, a bit more. out of all of the pools located in the neighborhood, all of them are 40 feet by 20 feet or larger. 5 out of the 9 pools have full patios surrounding them. At least 4 of the 9 pools have accessory structure pool houses, as well as detached hot tubs, which were not included in the size calculations.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. So just so the board is aware, this is not evidence that is being presented because the Ms. Alfonso is not a sworn witness. She is just providing a proffer as to what to expect by way of testimony, just so you're aware. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simon.
Can I ask a question about this exhibit?
Yes.
Are you saying that these homes all required variances for their pools and accessory structures? And do you know the lot sizes? And or are you saying that they went over their lot coverage and their rear yard coverage? I'm just a little confused. Or are you just, is this just an exhibit to show that there are other homes in the neighborhood that have pools?
This exhibit is meant to show that the proposed pool here and patio are of similar kind. It's a custom standard type of pool and rear yard leisure space expected of Millburn in this area.
Okay, but you don't know anything about the actual lot sizes and the coverage, in relation.
I do not know whether, correct.
All right, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The type of pool constructed for the Scoruses is understood to be a Hampton style pool, excuse me. As the applicants mentioned during the original hearing, and they will speak again shortly, the style of pool does not have a true patio right around the pool area. And functionally speaking, it just doesn't work for them. And it is understood because, of course, especially when kids are running on grass and it's becoming wet, especially in the summer, it can be dangerous, as well as messy for the home and the pool itself. The benefits to be gained by the proposal in creating a functional outdoor leisure area for the applicants and their family substantially outweigh any detriment. With the additional proposed landscaping, along with the average size of the pool and standard size patio of the area, the proposal will be aesthetically pleasing, add visual interest to the front of the view of the home with additional landscaping, and the rear of the home with the Hampton style high-end design, but with the necessary functionality provided by standard patios accompanying pools in the Millburn area. If I may stop sharing my screen here.
Ms. Alfonso, your clients are going to testify in this case?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may ask them to be sworn in to give testimony.
Let's swear the witness.
Yeah, are you both, well, first you have to, are you both going to be testifying?
We may both testify.
Okay, so both of you raise your right hand. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in tonight's Zoom hearing to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, your names for the record, spelling your names, but you can only speak one at a time, even when you testify.
Spiro Skouras, S-P-I-R-O, S-K-O-U-R-A-S.
And your first name?
Spiro, S-P-I-R-O.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Lauren Skouras, L-A-U-R-E-N. Last name Skouras, S-K-O-U-R-A-S.
Thank you. We're ready.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Skouras, You own the property located at 10 Alexander Lane, and I understand you've been living there for several years. What brought you to the township of Millburn?
What brought us to the township of Millburn? We've been here for a decade now. We love it. We were moving from the city. We wanted to be at a place that is amazing for families, beautiful homes, wonderful community, beautiful downtown, and amazing schools. So it was a very easy decision for us when we were thinking about where to relocate.
Thank you. Can you please describe the existing home and the conditions of the property for the board to recap for them?
Yes, so our home was built a decade ago. We moved into it in 2014. We didn't make any changes to the inside of the home. We loved it as is. This is our first time coming to the board for any sort of variance or any sort of zoning request. We specifically bought this property because we also loved the backyard and liked that it was a nice flat backyard. We always envisioned when our kids got a little bit older that we would want to put a pool in to be able to enjoy that. And that's what we did. And when we first put the pool in, we honestly loved the look and feel of the Hampton style. We thought that was going to work incredibly well for us. And that's what we put in. And what brings us here today is, as we discussed last time and as we've been discussing tonight, functionally, it hasn't really worked out for us. Our kids are incredibly active. We have a 10-year-old boy, a 7-year-old girl. They do athletics and activities all the time. And they were slipping, falling. It was just dirty. So as much as we love and absolutely love the aesthetics of the pool, functionally, we're finding that it's not as safe, as comfortable as we wanted it to be. And so if we were able to build a patio or add on to the patio in a way that was conforming, meaning find any space from the garage, from the driveway or the backyard patio, we would do it. But unfortunately, those structures are such that we're not able to make any changes to them, as you mentioned. And so we're trying to get what we need, again, from a functional perspective, to get as close to a conforming status as possible. And believe me, if we were able to do it, I know it takes a lot of time and energy and money to come in front of the board. We're only doing this because we feel we have no other choice. And that's what brings us here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. And just describe what is being proposed in terms of landscaping. I know that you changed the design a bit.
We did. As you know, and as we've discussed, we came to the board back in December. We heard a lot of feedback about our landscaping plan and were there ways and amendments that we could make to make it more conforming, as we've discussed, and also to make it so that the street view, et cetera, was a bit more aesthetically pleasing. And we've done that. So we're coming back, as you can see, with a revised landscape architecture plan. And again, the minimal amount that we think we can put in from a patio perspective to get a little bit more around those 3 sides right now that are Hampton style.
Great. Thank you. Did you have an opportunity to speak with your neighbors about the proposal?
All of our neighbors. We, of course, take this seriously. We know that when we were originally coming to the board back in December, something had to be sent to all of our neighbors within 200 feet. So we've spoken to all of our neighbors, both our 2 neighbors on the side, the ones where our backyard goes into them, and even the ones across the street from us as well, to see if what we're proposing would cause any hardship or if they had any concerns or issues we could address, and none of them did.
Thank you. And did you retain any experts to assist you with this application?
Oh, yes. I mean, we have been working all along with our pool contractor, Derek Burton. We had an engineer and we have a landscape architect from Eden Designs, who's also on the line tonight, along with Derek, to discuss what was possible, what was doable, again, to try to get as close to conforming as possible. So absolutely, we've been wanting to, again, take the feedback of the board and work closely with experts.
Thank you. Thank you. Perhaps the board members may wish to ask any questions of the Scoruses.
Are there any questions from board members of this witness? Eileen, I just have a question here. I'm looking at their plan, pool location and grading plan. They're showing that they have a lot area of just over 21,000 square feet. What is the minimum in this district?
20,000.
20,000. So this property is larger than the minimum required in the zone. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members?
I have a
Yes,
question.
okay.
With respect to the change, the different landscaping, could you kind of describe the difference in the landscaping that you've proposed?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, or we could have Derek or our landscape architect also discuss with specifics what was put in the plan. We put a little bit more in the front where the street would be and a bit more in the back also. But I'll have the landscape architect or Derek, the experts, if we want to swear them in, they can also speak to that as well.
Okay.
I brought over Derek and is it Joe?
Yes.
He's open.
Yes.
Thank you.
If we may, I'd ask Lauren to go through and introduce that exhibit A1.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
are we going to first open to the public questions for the witness who has testified so far? Or do you want to keep going with this new witness?
I
and
think
then-
we'll ask if there are questions at the end of the testimony.
Okay.
And if I may ask Lauren to just continue for a moment to discuss the neighborhood pools.
Yes, I'm happy to introduce the exhibit that Samantha took you through earlier, which is really just looking about, is looking at other neighborhood pools, sizing, where we were thinking about its exhibit. I guess this was our first one, so exhibit 1 or exhibit A. I would like to swear it in for testimony. Thank you.
Lauren, if we could just walk through it a bit.
Yes, so when we were originally thinking about what size pool to put in, again, as we were thinking about our Hampton style pool and thinking about what other pools and looks fit in with the neighborhood, this is the type of stuff that we were looking at in terms of benchmarks, in terms of other pools in the surrounding area. And so this is some of the data that we had used and thought about. So that's what this is. This is looking at within our neighborhood, in the poet section, where we are, what are similar pools, and what is the traditional look and feel in the neighborhood, again, to try to do something that is pretty much on the same size and scale of others with similar home sizes in our neighborhood.
Thank you. And are most of the pool, are all of the pools at least 40 feet by 20 feet?
From the data we collected, exactly, and what you can see on this exhibit, that is exactly right. They're of the same size, if not larger than what we have put in. That's exactly correct.
Thank you. Is there any further
Are
questions?
there any other questions of this witness from board members?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a quick question? Ma'am, how was it determined, or how did you determine the dimensions and size of the pools on A1?
Lauren did several of the research with me and directed me to complete the exhibit itself. The exhibit itself was completed based off dimensions from Google Earth.
So was there a scale,
So they're
Sam,
all
on there?
approximates, but yes, there is a
All
scale on the
approximates.
Google Earth
Okay,
that allows you to measure.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions of board members of this witness? Ms. Alfonso, your next witness?
I can ask Derek Burden to be sworn in of Pure Custom Pools. Does Joe want to go first? I think Joe's ready, so let's have Joe Polachek. I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly.
Perfect. Don't worry.
Thank you. Sworn in to give testimony.
Okay, if you just raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear from the testimony about to give in tonight's Zoom hearing to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you just state your name for the record, please?
Sure. My name is Joseph Polachek, Joseph. Last name is P as in Peter, Olacek.
Thank you.
If I may pull up the plan for you.
Sure. The document that we're looking at here is a revised landscape planting plan. The previous version of this plan featured a minimal planting space that was featured to the north and west of the pool itself. And what we have done on this revision was to add an evergreen screen around the northwest and south edges of the property. The concept being to block views both into and out of the specific pool area in the backyard of the residence. We also proposed some ornamental trees and plantings surrounding the pool, which was more for the homeowners' beautification of the backyard. From the front, we have minimal access points via pool code fences on the left and right-hand side of the residence, which was basically for maintenance access and pedestrian access off the driveway. The most substantial alteration between this and the previous version was obviously the screen planting that is proposed as 57 green giant arborvitae that are to be installed at a size between 7 and 8 feet in height. Generally speaking, these trees will grow between 18 inches and 36 inches in a year, depending on obviously environmental conditions and water supply. But this should be basically a green wall surrounding the property on 3 sides.
Council, can we qualify this witness?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't
My
want to
apologies.
interrupt, but
My apologies. Joe, Mr. Polachek, if you could provide your professional qualifications for the board.
Absolutely. My name is again, Joe Polachek. I graduated from Rutgers University, the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences, back in 2012. Prior to graduating, I had started my company, Eden Design, which focused primarily in construction, but I've been in the landscape industry since 2002, practicing professionally since 2014.
And have you appeared before any boards before?
I have Chester, Bernardsville, and Randolph Townships.
Mr. Polachek, are you licensed?
I am, yes, sir. Both professionally through ASLA and through the New Jersey Board of Landscape Architects.
Okay.
Are your licenses in good standing?
Currently, yes, sir.
We can accept this witness as an expert in landscaping.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Mr. Polachek, did you?
Have anything else to offer? If there's any questions.
Comments?
Does anybody have any questions with regards to the landscaping design?
Board members, do you have any questions of this witness?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Mr. Polachek, I'm looking at your landscaping plan, and I'm referring to, it's dated March 11th, 2021, and signed on March 17th, it looks like 2021, with your raised seal.
Yes, sir.
My question has to do with the existing trees that appear to be located along the left-hand lot line on the property. I don't know if that's the eastern side.
I believe it is. Yes, there's
Right.
a series of maples and oaks to that side.
Right. So the question is, are the proposed green giant arborvitae plantings on that east side of the property, are they going to interfere at all with any of the existing trees that are currently planted and vice versa?
So generally speaking, we try to field locate the majority of these trees when they interact with root systems of other shade species. we will adjust these on site to make sure that we're not disturbing the majority of the existing root systems of those shade trees. On that particular side, and there's also a few that are on the north property line as well, where the location of these trees might bump slightly more into the property to avoid those root networks.
Yeah, thank you.
I have just one question. Have you counted up the number of proposed trees and how many, and if so, how many are there?
Yes, sir. So in the upper left-hand corner of that plan, there's a planting schedule. We lead off with two deciduous trees, which are more or less ornamentals, Kuza dogwood trees. There's also below that a series of coniferous trees proposed. One cryptomeria, the green giants total in at 57. There's one Nellie R. Stevens holly and two Serbian spruce proposed. If my math serves me correctly here, that would be a total of 63 trees proposed.
Thank you. And can you tell us, with reference to the plan, where the shrubs are being proposed to be
Yes.
planted?
So if we're able to zoom in on the pool and surrounding patio, on the north side of the pool, there's a low shrub planting, which is an alternating mix of American boxwood and I believe it's hydrangea. Yes, endless summer hydrangea. On the east side of the pool is where we located two Kuza dogwoods or ornamental trees with a planting of limelight hydrangea between those. These are flowering deciduous shrubs, which will start, flowering out in early spring and end up in the summer, late fall, with the exception of the boxwoods, which are obviously evergreens.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from board members of this witness? Are there any other witnesses, counsel?
Unless the board has any questions that may be answered by the contractor, the pool contractor, I think that we could see if the board members have any other questions.
All right, we're going to ask now if there are members of the audience
Or, yes.
who have any questions first, before statements. Just questions now from board members. Eileen, is there anyone with their hand up?
No.
All right, members of the public, this is the time for you to make statements, if you have statements to make. Eileen, anybody?
No.
All right, board members, this is the time for you to debate the matter.
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, can we stop the screen sharing, please, so that the board
Yes,
members can all be seen? Thank you.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll start. I think it's a very nice landscaping plan. I'm still having a tough time with this application because we're talking about an oversized lot. And my concern is that it just seems like the hardship is a personal hardship. I don't see a hardship as it relates to the lot. It's not like they can't have a pool. They already have a pool. I'm still a little confused about the exhibit. We don't know the lot size for any of those homes. We don't know if those pools required variances. So, those are some of my concerns.
I'll say that, I revisited the property this weekend just to kind of refresh my recollection. And, candidly, admittedly, I know it is a self-inflicted hardship, but there's no other solution to this problem. They can't move the pool. And I can readily understand the issue the applicant is raising about the Hampton style, not necessarily being appropriate. Maybe it's a Northeast issue. I don't know, a New Jersey thing, but there are certain safety concerns associated with the style as it exists today. And I think that this is a reasonable solution. And I think that the applicant has done a really good job in addressing the board's concerns about plantings and shielding and, shrubbery and things like that. So, all that, I'm actually in support of this application.
Anyone else?
My feeling is similar to Mr. Toger's in that, I mean, there's obviously issues with the application, but there's also a safety issue at hand, which I think needs to be considered. And that, along with the fact that they've gone to great lengths to amend the application and to put in a great deal, a lot of the plantings and I think it's I think it's an improved application over what was first presented, and this is something that I could support.
Anyone else on the board? Let me give you my thoughts for what it's worth. I was opposed to this application when it first came before the board, but I am very impressed with the amount of shrubbery and trees that have been proposed now. I think that this, I understand the argument that this is an oversized lot, but I think that the applicants have worked very hard and are willing to spend a great deal of money to isolate the pool from the view of any neighbors. So I am inclined to vote in favor of this application, although I was originally very much opposed to it. Anyone else on the board? Is there a motion in this case?
I move approval of application 3768-20.
Subject to,
As it's been revised.
subject to everything that's shown on the plans.
Subject to the amendments shown on the revised plan, yes.
I second
Is
the
there-
motion.
Jody Sharma,
Yes.
Dave Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutoris,
Yes.
Jessica Glad,
No.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
you're quite welcome.
Have a good evening.
Okay, next case is Melissa Rodriguez at 8 Wells Lane in Short Hills. I see that there are two people who are showing up there. One is the applicant and one is Mr. Singer. Mr.
Yes.
Singer, what is your position?
On this project, I am an architect and planner.
Okay. Is Ms. Rodriguez here?
She is. She seemed muted.
She's muted and,
I think she'll fix that.
and I can't see her either.
Oh.
There she
Is this better?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay,
Well, just a minute. We
Yes.
have to have you sworn,
yes,
both of you, if you're both going to testify. We might as well do it together.
If you would both just raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in tonight's Zoom hearing to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Just state your names for the record, please.
Melissa Rodriguez.
Thomas Singer.
Okay, thank you.
Who's going to go first?
Would you like me to go first, Tom? What's appropriate?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for giving me the time to make this presentation. We've been wanting to expand our outdoor living space for years. With the impact of COVID-19, 2 parents working from home and 3 kids doing virtual school, our needs became more of a priority. My husband worked in the city pre-COVID and has taken over my home office for over a year. I'm a private college counselor who has always worked from home. I have been forced to meet with students at odd times based upon my husband's work schedule being in the office. And I would like to, one of the reasons why I would like to build a deck or patio is that I could start meeting with students socially distanced in person. Additionally, I run a non-for-profit and would like to safely meet with volunteers prior to our events. My non-for-profit is active in town. It's called Missy's Miracle, and the charity has been very active throughout COVID with giving back to our community. And I want to continue this by utilizing an outdoor living space. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions of this witness?
Question.
Steve?
So, Ms. Rodriguez, exactly how would you be using the outdoor space to support your charity?
Yeah, well, I would, right now, I don't have a usable deck or a patio. So this way I could work with my volunteers when we plan an event on a patio or a deck.
So just for planning, not for holding events.
No, would not be holding my events. No, this is strictly for planning purposes. A lot of the events that we do are in the community. For example, we have a 5K.
That's okay. Right.
Okay. Not for events, no.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up question. There is an existing deck, is there not, on this house?
Yeah.
Well, it's very dangerous. The stairs that we have going up to the deck are all loose. So I don't let anyone who's not a member of my family, I don't let any of my children's friends on those steps. And the deck is very decrepit. So we don't utilize it at all.
So why is there a need to expand the deck and build a patio versus just fix the deck that's there?
The patio would be in a different location. The patio would be replacing where my old swing set was, which is off of the driveway. That is not near the deck at all. It's in a different portion of my backyard. So I think the patio would actually take up less space than what the swing set did. And we've removed the swing set already. And the deck that we have now that we would be replacing is small. So this would just be extending it. Tom could give you the exact footage, but it would just be extending it to make it more family friendly. We're a family of 5, and the family that lived here before here was a family of 3. So it's really just to accommodate my family of 5.
I have a question. The application is for both a deck and a patio.
Yes, sir.
What is the size of the existing deck?
Is Tom discuss that?
It's
Wait. Okay, do you want to? All right, go ahead.
it's 9 by 17. However, because of a portico that sort of infringes on that, it's the practical usable space is 9 by 13.
And what is the size of the proposed deck?
The proposed deck, we're proposing to extend it 7.6 feet, which would make it 17 feet deep.
17 by what?
17 by 17, 17.5. But everything beyond 13 is sort of circulation because of the door to the house.
Any other questions from board members?
Yeah, I just have one more because I can't do the math that fast. I'm looking through the papers. If you were just to expand the deck without the patio, would you essentially be conforming on one of these two? So these two variances, so the I guess occupied portion of the yard?
We would be, no, in no way. The reason we're here for a variance is that there's not enough rear yard to meet the 25% rear yard unoccupied period. So without putting a thimble of space, we're already under that 25.
That's correct. The configuration of the property, they already don't have 25% rear yard unoccupied.
Okay, thanks.
The way the house is situated.
Right, but just to follow up on Amy's question, can you break it down for us? Can you break down the contribution?
Hey, Steve,
We're having a hard
Steve,
time hearing.
wait, I'm sorry, Steve, I apologize. You're going in and out.
I'm sorry.
Your audio.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you.
that's
Yeah,
good.
Can
I'm
you
sorry.
repeat?
To follow up on Amy's question, can you break down the contribution to the requested variance of the two components? How do they break down?
The patio is, well, first of all, there are only two variances. One is your rear yard unoccupied. Both of those things aggravate it. There's no way to solve it, even if you don't do anything, if you don't put anything back there.
Yeah, that's
The
not my
side
question.
yard, the accessory use in the side yard, that is the patio, not the deck.
So the patio does not contribute to the rear yard unoccupied?
It does, but
Yeah.
it's the only component that contributes to the side yard, accessory
Okay.
use in the side yard.
So do you have an approximation as to the patio's contribution to the rear yard unoccupied?
Yes, I can tell you that. There is approximately,
About 6.5 by 14. That's in the backyard, about that.
well, the patio is 13 feet square,
Right.
the accessory part of
Okay.
that. So let's see. It's approximately 95 square feet.
Say that again.
It's about 95 square feet of the area that's part of the rear yard unoccupied.
So it's 95 square feet of the 2901?
95 square feet of the, okay, so the 2901 is the total now, right?
No, well, 2901 is proposed usage on my schedule attachment E.
So,
Existing is 3156.
wait, where's rear yard unoccupied here?
Maybe it's better on the drawing.
Yeah. Rear yard unoccupied. Okay, so it's currently 22.95. It's going to be 21.17. And your question is 95 of the, well, 95 of the difference between those two numbers. And I can,
Okay, so just to be clear, because you've just now sort of alerted me to something else, which is the two numbers you just read, the 22.96 for existing and the 21.17 for proposed are on the diagram. They're on this,
right.
but they don't match what's on attachment E. Attachment E has different numbers on it.
Let me find attachment E. Rear yard unoccupied. 2119. 2139 and 1966.
Right.
All right. Those are the numbers I was basing this on.
Which
Not,
numbers
not
are
the
those?
number, not the numbers on the drawing.
Wait,
Okay,
Now
so
I'm
which are
wait,
accurate?
wait.
Which are the numbers? Yeah.
Do you, the ones on the Schedule E are the numbers.
Can, I'm sorry, can we back up? I
Mhm.
know Mr. Singer, I believe at the beginning, proffered that he was going to be providing testimony as
Yes.
both the architect as well as the planner.
Yes.
He has not yet been qualified. I know he's been sworn. Do we want to just take a moment, since he's providing some testimony now, and I think this is important to identify specifically the amount of the deviation that's being sought by the applicant, that we get him qualified as an expert witness.
I agree. Thank you.
So I'll do it. So Mr. Singer, can you please provide for the board your qualifications, your areas of expertise and licenses and experience as both a professional architect as well as a professional planner?
I've been a licensed architect.
Anybody else have feedback?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
I don't know.
So that could be me.
Yeah,
Let me try turning the volume down.
yeah.
See if I can still hear you guys. I've been a licensed architect since 1988 and a licensed planner since 2012. I've presented before.
Speak up, please.
Through a lot of New Jersey and New York. And I've presented before this board several times and been a member for 10 years.
And is your license in the field of architecture and planning remain in good standing?
They are.
Maybe, could we ask maybe Missy and Wolfgang to mute?
Okay, I can mute.
Yeah, I don't know who's, so maybe if we just mute as many people as possible.
Did that help? Yeah, I think. Can you hear me? Okay. Then we're good. So why don't I present this case? Actually, it's not. It's still. Okay. Our proposal is to expand the existing deck to provide more space.
Wait. Somebody has to accept his qualification.
Okay.
Your qualifications are accepted as both a planner and an architect.
Okay. All right. Our proposal is to expand the existing deck to provide more space for a dining table, grill, and sufficient circulation space to allow for outdoor meals and gatherings. The current deck has approximately a 9 by 13 square.
Yeah, Joe, you have to stay muted, Joe, because yours is the one, we keep muting you because yours is causing the problem. So stay muted.
Is this better? Yes, okay.
Mr. Singer, can we just, before you start in with your presentation,
Yes.
can we just, running with Mr. Toger's question, can you clarify for the record specifically what is being requested by the applicant by way of variance relief? In terms of what, we'll start with rear yard unoccupied and then we'll do accessory structure in the side yard.
Okay. Rear yard unoccupied.
For the board's edification, what the existing percentage and square footage is, what is proposed, and the
Okay.
extent of the variance.
So the existing square footage is 3,156 square feet. 3,688 are required. And after, our proposal would be to make it 2,901 square feet. The percentages on that are 21.39 existing, 19.66 proposed. And that's rear yard unoccupied.
So do you know why these numbers that you just read to us do not match the numbers on the diagram?
On the drawing?
On the drawing.
I think the drawing might have missed a small paved area on the side of the house, the opposite side of the house. A flagstone patio that now houses some air conditioning units.
And
Okay,
what-
thank you.
And what about in terms of, just for clarification, the accessory structure in the side yard?
The accessory structure in the side yard, that's really not a number thing.
But specifically, that is just the patio?
That is about half the patio. So if you look at exhibit, or if you look at the drawings, detail 7 shows the location of the rear setback of the house, cutting through the middle of the patio. And the distance that it extends forward from that line is 8.7 feet.
Thank you.
Okay, so that drawing also shows the expanded deck, which is coming out another I gotta go back to another piece of paper. Here we go. So the deck's going out 7.6 feet, and then the stair. for a total of 10.7, 3-foot stair. The total accessory coverage of those two things is 16.11% of the property, of the 20%. And the setback of the patio from the street is 81 feet, which is consistent with what a corner lot would be without a rear yard. So with that as a standard for what would be acceptable if you didn't have a rear yard, it's out of the way of the street, and it's in the corner that's farthest away from the neighbors. And it's 100 feet from the carway. So the patio is designed so that 4 couples could gather with social distancing adjacent to the driveway. This would be the primary meeting place for relatives and friends who don't need to mount the ascent to this deck. 13 by 13 feet was the minimum that would allow for the 6-foot separation between people. The property predates the current zoning. The house is pushed way to the back of the property. And it's an undersized lot. But with all that, the only current nonconformity is the rear yard unoccupied. And the one we're adding is that portion that extends into the side yard. All right. Trying to skip some of the stuff we covered here. All right, so the distance that we have between the 12-foot accessory setback in the back and the rear yard line of the house, the rear setback line of the house is 7.2 feet, which you can't do much with. Certainly not enough to get some people with social distancing involved. Now, the accessory use is about half of what it would be for a corner lot. That's about 3.3% of the total lot area. But because the backyard is so constricted, it's poking forward. And that total accessory coverage is 16.11 square feet, which is well within the 20 square feet that one would be able to build on a normal lot. And if you look at the rear setback line, which goes past what's essentially the breakfast nook of the back that sticks out of the back of the house, it parallels the street. And that has really nothing to do with the rear property line. The lot's shallow and wide, and the street and the back don't line up, so you don't get much of a backyard left. On the other hand, everything's set back with what other sections of the code consider to be acceptable. Based on that, I'll go through the zoning arguments. The powers of the municipal land use law give zoning boards the authority to grant relief under conditions and there's several conditions. We believe that this application can be considered a hardship based on C1 under clauses A, B, and C because of the shape, the topography, and the structures legally existing on the property. It's also can be considered a C2 variance because the prime motivation for this is health and safety, which is the first purpose of zoning in New Jersey. It's our opinion that this application can be granted without such substantial detriment to the public good and won't substantially impact the intent of the or purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. Because this lot is unique in shape, topography, and location of the existing home are the reason why relief is needed. The proposed plan is consistent with the majority of homes in the district and would be conforming with the ordinance were it not for the anomalies associated with this specific site. So the ask is for not much of an accessory use on a very challenged lot. And I think the size is, the setbacks and the sizes are mitigated by the distance from the street and by the steep, the large amount of cover around the lot. The deck's 48 feet from the nearest house and the patio is 58 feet from the nearest house to that, beside the left side.
So, actually, Joe, I'd like to ask you a question, Joe. You know, it's our mandate when we grant variances to keep in mind that the variance always goes with the home, right? Stays with the home, not with the homeowner. And the applicant's making an interesting argument about social distancing requirements associated essentially with COVID-19. So should we take something like that into consideration as a hardship, given hopefully the temporary nature of the requirement to social distance on a go-forward basis? You have to unmute, Joe. Yeah, you got to unmute.
I would agree with that. I think it is a temporary situation.
Okay. Okay. Right.
But isn't there also a permanent hardship insofar as the positioning of the house on the lot? I mean, it's pretty far back, and were it more forward, it would not be an issue.
Right.
Well, let's first see if there's any additional testimony from the applicant or the applicant's planner. I think not. I don't hear any. So we're going to now ask if there are any questions from board members who have not had an opportunity to ask questions. If not, are there any questions from anyone in the audience? Eileen,
No.
is there anyone in
Wait,
the
hold on,
audience?
hold on, hold on.
Pardon me?
A hand was just raised. Joe, can you turn your volume down? I think. I brought over Lucy I believe, wait, where did they
I
go?
don't know what's happening here. My mute is going on by itself.
Now you sound okay.
Unmute.
Yeah, I think it's okay now.
Hello. Hi,
Joe, we need you to mute, Joe. Okay.
He's muted.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't know why it's happening.
Yeah, you're gonna have to stay muted.
I don't know how to fix it. If I,
Okay, just stay, there you go.
Okay, is there a question?
Yes,
Please identify yourself, please.
okay. My name,
Wait, I can't hear her. She's,
can you hear us?
you're going in and out.
Hello, can you hear us?
That's a little better.
Okay, how about now?
All
Okay,
right,
why don't
give
you
it a try.
proceed?
Joe, you have to stop unmuting yourself.
You have to stay muted, Joe.
Okay,
Okay,
why
can
don't
we
you ask your
continue?
question? Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're the adjacent neighbor from the back.
Okay,
So we have
what
the
is your address, ma'am, and your name?
We live in 8 Wyndham Road. My name is Xiaoluo Yuan, spelled as Xiaoluo. I hear a lot of echo.
Go.
Are you, yeah,
Last name is Yuan.
Okay, and you're at 6 Wyndham?
No, 8.
8 Wyndham.
Wyndham.
Okay, please ask your question.
So can I share my screen? I just want to show a
Well,
picture. that we-
well, at this point, we're just, the chairman opened up the hearing to questions for either Ms. Rodriguez or Mr. Singer. Do you have a question for either one of those witnesses?
So the question is, do you plan to install a fence to block the view or plant some evergreen along the property line to protect the privacy of both homes?
100% yes, a fence is in the plans. A privacy fence.
So the fence is going to be, what kind of fence? And is it going to block the view?
It's going to be on my property. It's actually going to be, because there's a metal fence there now, we don't want to touch that. So it would be in front of that on my property. And our proposal includes a cedar fence from the contractor, a privacy cedar fence.
What is the height of the fence?
I will have to get that from upstairs. Hold on.
It's probably 6 feet.
I think it was even 8 feet, but I'm walking up.
No.
I don't allow fences higher than 6 feet, so.
Oh, then it's 6. I haven't studied that, but I'm going. Hold on, I'll get you the exact material that he proposed.
I
don't know what this
While
is
we're
right
waiting, is the fence
Yeah.
reflected in the plan anywhere?
It's
No.
in my it's in
a contractor proposal, apparently.
contractor proposal.
No, it's not on the plans. There's an existing fence that
I
this
don't
is
know
going
where
to
this is.
But
supplement.
you can only one speak at a time. You both can't be speaking.
Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
So there's an existing chain link fence. This one will be in front of it. The retaining wall on the back of this property is about 6 feet high, 6 to 8 feet. This will be on top of that wall.
Well, no,
No?
you can't put a 6-foot fence on top of a 6-foot wall because now
With
it's 12 feet tall.
With a 2-foot setback.
You have to have a 3-foot setback between them and you have to, so if you're gonna come in for a fence permit, it's gonna have to reflect that.
So our concern is, their ground level is already 10 feet above our ground level. If you consider the height of the deck, so it will be about over 15 feet from the deck overlooking our patio. So the only problem we have is the privacy, because, we can hear, their kids and people talking all the time. And we also have a lot of activities going on in our backyard. So we just kind of asking, if either you can install a fence to block the view or some kind of tall evergreen, just to, provide some privacy.
The answer is 100% yes. We are planning on doing that. And we could certainly, ask you once we choose when it gets to the material, I'm happy to, show you what we're choosing as well.
Also, just an FYI, if the patio is going to be used for meetings and also, event planning.
Yes.
The thing is, sometimes we can, as Lucy mentioned, we actually can hear people talking. I guess you guys can hear us talking too sometimes. So that might be a privacy concern that you want, because because if you are going to use the patio for conducting business.
Yes.
Wait, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. Ms. Rodriguez, can you look into the camera? If you're going to be providing sworn responsive testimony, we need to see you. So thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
We don't have the name of the gentleman who just asked the question.
Oh, my name is Zhiyang Wan, Zhiyuan. Last name is Wang.
Where do you live in the same address at 8 Wyndham Road?
Correct.
Should I address your question now? Is it appropriate?
Yes.
Okay. The first thing that I will be using the outdoor space for is for my individual students who I do college counseling with, and that would potentially be from the hours of right after school until about 7 p.m. So that's one-on-one. And then the planning for Missy's Miracle, I have a office in New Providence that I haven't been to since COVID because it's closed now to the public. But once that opens, any large meetings would be held there. I was just thinking that some of the small things that the Millburn High School Missy's Miracle Club does, we could have small groups when we plan for events that are, let's say 3 or 4 times a year. And I would also have another staff member from Missy's Miracle attending that meeting as well, because it is with students. It's with high school students.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or statements from members of the public?
Did you, Ms. Yan, did you say that you wanted to make a statement and introduce some exhibit?
Yeah, I was gonna show that I took from yard, so what the view looks like from our backyard.
If you want to do that, you can, but we need to swear you.
No, it's okay. No, we don't need.
Okay.
Any other members of the public have a comment or a statement they would like to make? I'll close the public portion of the meeting. Board members, let me start off. I'm a great believer in going and looking at properties. When I went and looked at this property, I noticed something very, very interesting. And that is that the prohibition against side yard uses is designed to protect adjacent properties. And the adjacent property here that would be tremendously affected would be the property on the corner of Highland and this street that this property is on. I am tremendously, and by the way, there are two, for those of you who have been there, we're talking about two completely different elevations. The patio, which I'm totally opposed to, is at a lower elevation, and this board does not sit to bail out people who buy houses that are set back too far on the property. And our job is, in my judgment, is not to grant variances for side yard uses where it is perfectly obvious that there's no way that the zoning officer or any enforcement officer can regulate the use of that patio. It's directly, I think the expert, Mr. Singer, said that it was 59 feet from the nearest house. To my eye, it was closer than that, but there are a bunch of windows in the rear of that house on Highland that look right down where that patio would be. And it's one thing for someone to testify, I'm going to use the patio only for X, Y, and Z, and put a limit on the number of people who would be there. It's another thing to expect the zoning officer to be able to enforce that if there's a party going on out there at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. I'm in favor of the expansion of the deck because the deck is there already. It's in lousy shape. It ought to be replaced with a proper deck. Yes, it does require a variance, but the variance that would be required for the outdoor patio would be to my mind, would be a very intrusive variance that would impact greatly the people who live in the property on Highland Avenue. So this is, in my view, this is a split case. I would be in favor of the variance as it relates, the requested variance as it relates to the enlargement of the deck. I would be totally opposed to the variance that would be required for the installation of this patio. Half of which, as the expert indicated, would be in the side yard where it is prohibited.
So, Joe, I'm in complete agreement with you. When I visited that property, it's a very small backyard. I agree. That's actually why I wanted to understand what portion of the rear yard unoccupied might be attributable to the patio for that very reason, so that we could subtract it out. I agree with you. The deck needs to be redone, and if you're going, and it's a very small deck, and if you're going to redo it, you might as well make it a little bit bigger, a little more functional for a family of 5. I agree with that.
And
So I'm in
it's
agreement with
much
you.
higher than, it's much higher in
Oh, yeah, of course,
elevation
yeah.
than
it
the
is.
patio, which is low.
Right, right.
Thank you, Steve.
But even with the proposed fence, 6-foot cedar fence, I mean, that's gonna give some shielding to that patio as well.
I think we should tackle this application in 2 different votes. One relating to the deck, the other relating to the proposed patio. So let's do the deck first. Is there a motion with respect to the request for the variance needed to expand the deck?
But we
Wait,
don't have the exact variance related
Yeah,
to
hold
only the
on,
deck.
hold on a second, hold on. Mr. Singer,
Yes.
you've been present during the discussion by the board relative to this application. Are you able to provide to the board the deviation that would be required by way of variance relief for rear yard unoccupied separately for the deck and for the patio?
Yes. It would probably be a good idea if you gave me a few minutes, though.
Am I allowed to say something, or is this the inappropriate time?
The application is closed, but it's up to the chairman if they want to reopen.
No, the hearing is concluded.
Understood.
Joe, I do have one concern before we get to the calculations and the vote, if I can. May I go? I don't know if he hears me. Does anyone hear me?
You can speak.
Yeah,
Amy.
go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
What's not clear to me, there was discussion of a fence or maybe some, trees and that certainly the applicant said, yes, I'll do, whatever's needed, but it's not here what it is. And so if we vote today, my concern is just the neighbors who expressed their concern about privacy from the other yard. This doesn't show what exactly is being committed to be done, right?
The applicant has the burden of proof, and they've presented a set of plans and testimony in support of the application. And then the board is left to decide what they want to do, whether they feel that the applicant has presented enough information for them to take a vote, or whether they feel like the applicant has not provided enough information and to so state.
Okay. Well, I guess for me personally, I feel a little concerned about what's going to actually wind up there without to vote and not know what that is.
Am I allowed to address that or no?
No, this is board deliberation.
Sorry.
Do we want to open it back up to the applicant to address Amy's concern?
That's up to the board. If the board wants to do that, certainly has the power to. Joe?
I'm having a problem with my mute and unmute. I keep getting a notice that that Eileen has muted me.
Because your volume is too high, you're causing feedback.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Your volume is too high, so it's causing feedback, which is why I'm muting you. You can unmute if you have to talk, but otherwise, stay muted.
You're saying that there's feedback because of what?
Probably volume is too high, turned up too high on one, I don't know.
Joe, only unmute yourself if you're going to speak. Because when you stay unmuted, no one can hear each other.
I'm sorry, I am having a problem here.
Joe, would you be okay if we open it back up to the applicant so she can address Amy's question?
That's fine.
Okay, can you just restate the question so I can address it properly? I have the information on the fence here, if that helps you. It's 160 linear feet of 6x8 shadow box cedar fence. Is that helpful?
Yes-ish, I guess. And where exactly is the fence gonna be?
It's going to cover the entire property line between my property and the people behind us.
So the entire back side of your property?
The entire back side of the property, yes.
Okay, yeah, that helps. Thank you.
And then am I allowed to address my next door neighbors on Highland? If you had a question about that, or is that inappropriate?
I don't think I did. I was concerned about the folks who came on the call today and their concern about privacy.
Yeah, this is right. This addresses that.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Is there a motion on this case?
Just before you do that.
All right, wait.
Rear yard unoccupied is, without the patio, is $29.91.
That's as proposed?
That is if you take the patio out of the rear yard unoccupied.
Right, but the 2991 square feet represents the proposed rear yard unoccupied if you remove the patio.
Yes.
And do you have that as a percentage, please?
That is 20.27%.
And so the new variance is what?
So Mr. Singer, can I help you out? Is it that what rear yard unoccupied as a percentage as proposed, it's 20.27%, and the maximum is 25%.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that's correct.
Well, that's the minimum, actually.
Minimum, you're right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So then that means that the actual variance is now going to be,
4.73%. Does that sound right?
yeah, 4.73. That's what I have. %4.73% for 697 square feet.
Correct.
Okay. Amy, your question about the fence is not actually part of this application.
Right.
So I don't know that we can really, I agree with you that we want to know what the fence is going to look like, but it's not something that you would actually be voting on.
Okay, that's fair enough, but should it, I guess, should it not be? So in other instances, this is just between us, right? In other instances where we have these kinds of concerns, we say that we want, certain plantings or things to shield it or what have you, right? So the neighbor has a concern.
Yeah.
And it's clearly not on the plan, or at least I don't see it on the plan, right? Some way to address that concern. So for myself, I could say, well, the applicant, as Rob Simon said, has testified to saying they're going to put in this fence, it's going to be, and so that alleviates the certain concern. Or does it actually need to be on the plan, specified in some way to make sure that the neighbor's concern is addressed?
Amy, to answer your question, the board certainly has the discretion as a condition of approval based on testimony that's provided, committing as a representation to install the fence with a description as to the style of the fence and the height of the fence. As a condition of approval, the board certainly could require the applicant to amend its plan and submit it to Eileen, identifying specifically the location of the fence.
Would
So
we
it's part
have
of the
to go
record.
through all this again?
No,
or-
no, no, we would
'Cause I
not have to
wanna
go.
make
It would not
people
have to
do
go
that,
back
yeah.
to the
No.
board. It would just be the board deciding to make it a condition of approval if you decided to do that.
Okay. So for me, again, it's just about the concern of the neighbor and the height versus their property and the desire for some privacy. I was willing to, based on what you had said previously, Rob, to just accept the testimony of the applicant as to what the fences they're putting in. I would feel more comfortable if it were on the plan, frankly. But I don't want to make people crazy, so.
Yeah, we would just, any approval will be conditioned upon installation and maintenance of such a fence.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so, Joe, can I make a proposal here?
So is the patio being removed from the plan?
I'm still having a problem here.
Joe, just stop muting yourself. When you're gonna speak, that's the only time you should unmute. Right now, you can speak, everyone can hear you.
Pardon me?
Go ahead and explain this to you.
Joe, can I call you on your cell phone? Do you have your cell phone?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna call you.
But mute you.
Yeah, well, you should mute yourselves.
I'll mute you, Joe. I'm gonna mute you. So is the patio, because I'm hearing two conference like the feedback is killing me. So is the patio being removed from the plan?
No, I believe that what is being discussed is whether someone's going to be making a motion to approve the deck portion first of the application.
with the revised calculations.
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Toger and Mr. Steinberger are speaking on the
Just-
phone, I
just
think,
press the
mostly to
unmute,
address the
and
technology
now
issue
I
that we're
guess you
facing.
can.
Okay, so Joe, can I make a motion in this?
Yes,
Okay, so I'd like to move approval of the application for the deck expansion only, with the understanding that the extent of the variance is now 4.73% or 697 square feet, with a stipulation that the applicant install the privacy fence that she described during testimony. Does that sound okay, Rob? Did I cover everything?
It just, yeah, Steve, hold on a second, please. So is part of your motion to not approve the patio?
Yes.
Okay, so I believe that what you should amend your motion to reflect that.
Okay, so we want to deny, I move that we deny the accessory side yard, which applies only to the patio, and that we approve rear yard unoccupied that applies only to the deck, where the variance is 4.73% and the square footage is 697 square feet. And we have a stipulation that the applicant include the privacy fence that she described in testimony.
Well, shouldn't we discuss the patio separately and keep that as a separate motion?
You can do it, you can do it either way. But the
I would
problem
prefer-
is that
I would rather-
if you,
as Joe had originally proposed, I would rather separate those out.
Okay. So do you want to make a motion, Wolfgang?
Sure. So I move approval of the deck as restated at 2,991 square feet, a variance of 4.73%, variance of 673 square feet, I think you said. Condition upon the installation and maintenance of a 6-foot cedar fence, which I believe was 168 feet, 168 linear feet along the rear of the property.
I second that.
all in favor?
No.
no, we got to take a roll call.
Eileen,
Jody Sharma,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutoris,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Shanju Kulkarni,
Yes,
Jessica Flatt,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
yes,
And now, do we need a motion to deny the accessory side yard?
You do.
So I'll make a motion to deny the accessory side yard.
variance.
Variance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jody Sharma,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutoris,
No.
Jessica Flatt,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yes.
Shanju Kulkarni,
yes,
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. Okay, the next case is Bettman, 1 mini sink.
John, is Rich Keller part of this?
Mr. Bettman,
Yes, he is.
are you going to testify in this case?
I am.
All right, let's swear the witness.
If you're both, who's ever going to testify, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this Zoom hearing tonight?
I do.
Your names for the record, please.
Jordan Bettman.
Lauren Bettman.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Lauren Bettman.
John James, architect.
Richard Keller, planner and engineer.
It's muted.
Great. Do you want me to start, John?
Yes, go ahead, Jordan. I think, are we ready to start or?
Yes.
Excellent. So as stated earlier, I'm Jordan Bettman, my wife, Lauren Bettman. We're new to your town. We actually just moved to 1 Minnesink, been about 7 months now, but I guess in COVID terms, you just sort of lose track of time. You know, we really excited to be new neighbors in your town. It's obviously, it's beautiful. And when we were looking to move out of New York City, as we did, Short Hills is basically the only place we looked. So we're able to find this house at 1 Minnesink, which we were really excited about. And from the time we sort of saw the property, we had engaged John James and Rich Keller to take a look with us. Our plan when we purchased the property was to build a pool and a reasonable pool house. And had those guys get to work a few months ago, putting together a plan and a proposal. I'm sure, as you guys know, as a corner lot, there's some idiosyncrasies about what we can build and how much coverage we're allowed to have, even though we have a relatively sizable property that has kind of grades or gradients in terms of slope. And so we feel like there's a really nice place to put a pool and a pool house. We are asking for a little bit of a variance in terms of lot coverage and a couple other small tweaks that I'll have John James and Rich Keller take you guys through.
Any questions of the witness? I have just one question. I think the plan shows a 3-car garage. I saw only a 2-car garage.
We only have a 2-car garage, so I don't know where the third came from.
Can I ask, is the pool there already?
No.
No, okay.
But someone surmised that there was a previous pool there because it looked like it was set up for one.
Yeah, it looked like there was a cover.
No, there's not a cover for a pool there. No.
Okay.
That's another application. I know which one.
No, I know it is. There's 3 pools on the agenda. Sorry.
Can I go ahead and start?
Yes.
Okay. So we're here tonight to request permission from the Board of Adjustment to build a new pool and a pool house on this historic property at 1 Minnesink Road. And to realize this improvement, we're coming to you to ask for 3 variances. The first variance is for a front yard setback for an accessory structure on a front yard, on a corner lot. It is, the required is 80 feet. And we have a corner of our pool terrace that intrudes into that by a total of 29 square feet.
Mr. James, let me interrupt you just for a second. If you're going to get into the variances, I'm assuming are you testifying this evening as a licensed architect, and should we get you qualified?
Certainly.
Okay. And I understand, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I think we should get Mr. James qualified.
yes, I
before
agree.
he starts
Mr.
testifying.
James, qualifications.
I have a Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Virginia, a master's from Columbia University. I'm registered in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. I've been a practicing architect for 40 years. All my registrations are currently active. I'm principal in an 8-person architectural and historic preservation firm in Maplewood, New Jersey. And I've been presenting before this board for the past 25 years.
Your qualifications as an architect are accepted by this board.
Thank you. So can I share my screen, and I will,
I interrupted you, Mr. James, just you were talking about the first variance, the accessory structure front setback on a corner lot,
yes.
just to
So
remind you.
what I'm going to do is go here and just start with my presentation. This is a corner lot.
Okay. What are we looking at for the record, and is this part of the application package?
This is a part of your application package. This is our initial drawing that we submitted to you in your package, drawing number T02. Can everyone see that? I'm trying to get it to fill the full screen. I can't get the, there we are. Can everyone see this? So this is a corner lot on Highland Avenue and Mini Sink Road. It has a historic house on the property, and it has a large grassy area that's a grassy slope at the back corner, which looks like it was perfectly set up for a pool. And you can see it here. The grades step up to the very back. And here's that large grassy area behind the parking lot where you turn around. It has a so this area was really set up for either a large soccer field, or it may have been a previous pool. We couldn't believe how graded and perfect it was to put in there. As you can see from the photographs, there's very mature screening and plantings on both side yards here and also along the street. And I'll submit a landscaping plan later on to show you about that. This is an unusual property in that it slopes tremendously in terms of the size of the front yards to the backyards. So it's a corner lot. You have a very, very long front yard here and a very, very small side yard there, and a tremendously sharp angle here on Mini Sink Road. So when you do your 40-foot setback, you do your building setback, and you do your 80-foot accessory coverage setback for a corner lot, there's really only one area in this back corner where we would be able to locate our pool and our pool house. So we are locating that correctly within the 12-foot side yard setbacks for an accessory structure, and we're locating the pool in front of that. And this works out perfectly. You can see up here where we have our north-south arrows so that the pool faces south. The pool house sits on the north. The sun comes up at the east, travels around to the west, and your pool is kind of perfectly situated in that open grassy knoll. We need 3 variances for this project, and that's what we're asking you for today. The first one is for front yard setback for an accessory structure. It's required to be 80 feet, and we're asking for 75.3 feet, which is a variance of 4.7 feet. And you can see where that occurs right here in this corner edge of the pool terrace itself, which is high up on that upper ridge. The second variance we're asking for is for accessory use coverage on a corner lot. And you're required to have 7%, and we're asking for a 1.6% overage for a total of 8.6%. And I'll get into the details on that in a minute. And the third one we're asking for is that we're required to have a pool fence around the pool. And we have an existing fence on the 2 side yards, but we're going to put a new decorative fence that faces the house. And then we're going to put a black wrought iron or black aluminum fence here that runs along parallel with the contours. And at this point right here, it goes into the front yard setback for the house. And at this point over here, there's a maximum extension in of 28.4 feet, but that's hidden behind a very mature group of evergreen plantings here. It runs perfectly level with the contours on the property. We're going to be screening it with 4-foot high evergreen shrubs. And this way we don't have to change the grading contours in this area, and we don't have to harm or kill any of the mature trees on the property. So the pool and the pool house are being put right here in the green open area. And you can see all of these perimeter trees. In fact, the fence is going right around the base of an existing tree here. But we want to keep it level with the grade so that we can kind of minimize it. So you can see here at the corner.
Are these, Mr. James, I'm sorry, are these photographs that you're showing, were they submitted with the application package?
They were not. They're photographs that we used for the historic preservation approval. And I'm showing you tonight, and we'll submit copies to Eileen Davitt.
Okay, so do we want to, Mr. Chairman, mark for identification as A1, a series of colored photographs presented by Mr. James?
We do, but I also want to find out who took these photographs and when. Mr. James?
I took these photographs. They were taken in the winter before our presentation to the HPC. So they were in February or March.
We can mark them as applicant 1, A1.
Okay, there's a series of 4 photos. I mean, if you want, I have the rest of the HPC photos that I'm going to show you as well. So it's a total series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 photos.
So if there's a series of 10 photos, if you can just, so the first one you've shown us is the one with the basketball court in the foreground?
Yes, it is.
Are you going to be showing all 10 photos, Mr. James?
I will. I'm going to go through all 10.
Thank you.
So if we go to the next photo, this shows from down at the street, looking at the house from the front. You can see the stepping up. The very large tree in the center is where we're going to wrap our fence around at the bottom and stay with the existing grade. You can see the evergreen trees over here. You can see the pear trees in the front that also conceal this. And we're going to put a hedge in front of that. So with kind of 1, 2, 3 steps up, when we do this pool fence, you'll have the sloping down of the pool, and the pool fence will continue around that tree and right to the side yard. The issue here is that because of the nature of the geometry and the sharp slope of Mini Sink Road and where this hill is, is that it intrudes partially into the front yard setback, because you have to be taking that as a diagonal as opposed to it being working orthogonally with the house. The house is really parallel to Highland Avenue, and it's almost completely at an angle to Mini Sink Road. So there's a very acute angle here in which your front yard setbacks have to be set. So that accounts for the very, very small intrusion of the pool terrace itself, and for a portion of the fence at this point that's going to be completely concealed with an evergreen hedge. The third variance we talked about was for the coverage, and the proposed coverage is for a total of 907 square feet, or 1.6%. Now, if this was a mid-block lot, you draw a line across the back of the house and we'd be able to do 20% of the backyard, or approximately 10% of the lot coverage. So relative to the overall coverage on the site, we're really not covering very much, but relative to the restrictions on the corner lot, it is a 1.6% variance. I would like to point out that in terms of total coverage on the property relative to what we are doing, we are proposing a total building coverage of 7.1%, and where 13% is required. So we are under the building coverage by a total of 5.9%. And on the lot coverage, we're proposing a total of 26%, where 35% is required. So we're a total of 8.66% underneath the lot coverage. So even though we're slightly over on the variance for accessory coverage, we're well under in terms of our building coverage and in terms of our lot coverage. In terms of this being a historic house, it has two terraces in the front yard that are a part of kind of the honorific or character of the existing house. And I can show you here. So we have a front entry terrace on the house, which is approximately 600 square feet. And you can see on the side, there's a brick terrace there of another 100 square feet. So we have 700 square feet of entry platforms that are part of the historic character of this house that count as accessory coverage, but can't really be used by this couple for any type of recreational purposes since they're in their front yards. I mean, you could certainly take that out and have a walkway to the front door in both cases, and we could reduce the accessory coverage substantially. But in our presentation before the Historic Preservation Commission, it was agreed that these two terraces are a part of the original character of the historic house and should be maintained. And when you take those out of the equation, then we're asking for a total increase in accessory coverage for the pool and the pool house of 200 square feet, but we're still way under the lot coverage and the building coverages for the house and property itself. If you look at this aerial view, you can see how the house is parallel to Highland, and you can see how steeply the side yard goes back, but you can also see the incredible amount of mature trees up here and the small green opening in the middle, which is where we're going to be putting the pool. So there's that.
Mr. James, I'm sorry to interrupt you. What are you, I mean, I see what you're referring to, but this is not one of the 10 photographs.
This is
A1, correct?
This is one of my 10 photographs.
It is. Okay,
You.
because I see that there's some writing underneath. Did you take, it looks like it's a 2019 aerial from Google Maps.
This is an aerial Google Maps that was a part of the Historic Preservation Commission consultant's view of the property for the edification of all the commissioners. So
okay, but you didn't take this photograph yourself, correct?
It was provided by Martin Ross.
And the writing that is below it, whose is that?
That is a part of their planning process. It's not a part of what I am presenting to you. I'm simply commenting on the structure on the photo itself.
Okay, thank you.
And you can see the other photos that we presented showing the house from the side, because we're going to be doing our new pool house within the same character of the existing house. so that when we create this new pool house, it's going to have a stone chimney at the back. It's going to have clapboard that matches the house. It's going to have a synthetic slate roof that matches the house. It's going to have copper gutters and copper trim and columns that match the existing house. We're proposing a half open and half enclosed pool house. So the main space in the center that you see here from the front is totally open with columns all the way through, and it has a fireplace and a window up above just to bring light down into the ceiling. And then it has two side cabanas, and one is enclosed for bath, shower, and laundry, and the other is for a small kitchenette for entertaining. And it's an open seating area so that you can enjoy the pool in shade. So if you want to sit out in the sun, you sit out on the terrace. And if you want to be in the shade, then you can be in this covered cabana. So it's going to be a partially used pavilion that will be just winterized in the off season. And then down below, we're setting it on a full foundation, and we're going to put in a Bilco door so that we can put the pool equipment and everything on the inside, so that that won't be an encumbrance on the outside to either the Bettmans or to any of the neighbors. So it'll be totally enclosed in a partial basement space there. And you can see the side view of the cabana. It has an arbor that extends around it to provide some shade as well. And it has a step shape where it protrudes in the front and has two sides with the arbor. You can see the window into the kind of pantry kitchenette, and you can see the other window into the bathroom and the fireplace in the middle here. If I go back to the site plan, you can see the cabanas here, orienting to the pool, which is here, and there's room for seating on both sides. When we look at the bigger development of it, what we're going to be doing is you have the cabana with the pool, and then down the hill that I was showing you, we're going to put in some new bluestone steps that match the previous bluestone steps that you could see in the photos at the front of the house here. So these are going to be slab bluestone steps, just like the ones that are leading up to the main plaza. Our patio around the pool is going to be bluestone as well. And in front of that, facing the house, we're going to create a small arbor with a decorative fence. And then this is going to have the columns that match the pool house and the house. And it'll have two gates, and one will lead up to where the pool house and the pool is, and one will lead up at the very end of the pool itself. Because we were tight on coverage, we did a smaller pool terrace than we normally would have done. We would have wanted to carry that pool terrace as a rectangle completely around the pool. But we decided to stop at this point and to cut it back because we were trying to come to you with a percentage that we thought was very agreeable and could easily fit on the property. This arbor will have clematis or wisteria on it, and then it will be planted in front with flowering hydrangeas. And the hedges for the fence will be skip laurels, rhododendrons, and boxwoods. I want to move on to the landscaping because this shows you the heavy material landscaping that exists on both sides, ends of the property. I keep wanting to say the back, but we have two side yards here. So both side yards are completely densely planted with evergreens, as well as along the front street.
Is this colorized photograph? Is this part, or I'm sorry, a rendering?
This is part of what we sent to you as well.
Is it as colored, Mr.
Yes,
James?
it was.
Okay.
And so when we look here, this shows the dense screening at the very back of the property and along Minnesink Road. This shows the dense screening of the trees in front and the evergreen hedge that's directly in the front between Minnesink Road. This shows you the dense screening of the other side yard neighbor continuing along the back and the covering of the very large deciduous trees. And this shows you some of the existing plantings and screening that are already on the property. Pool house is gonna be located right up here behind this tree. That's where the fence is gonna turn right in front of the hill that comes down. So the hill steps down approximately 5 feet. And so by putting the fence at the line at the bottom of the hill and doing a 4-foot high fence, we can completely conceal it with an evergreen hedge so that it won't be seen in the view up the hill and won't be intrusive from the front of the property. And you can see that from the views here. You could certainly have an evergreen hedge right there, and it would be lost in the vegetation with the other boxwoods like the rest of the front of the house. So we're trying to do something that's very seamless, that fits in, that is background, but that can be a nice part of the continuation of this historic property. Again, this shows the back, and what you were saying about a 2-car garage is correct. This shows the photograph of the type of columns and arbor that we were proposing. And this shows the type of columns and trellis that we were going to be using for the pool house itself. So the hardships for this property really have to do with the corner and the angled property and dealing with it, cutting it so much into the backyard. Since it's a designated house, we have to keep those 2 terraces in the front of the property, and we can't take those away to be able to do our pool terrace. So we've cut back on the pool terrace, but that's why we're asking for the variance for the coverage for the corner lot. But I would say that it's also less than what it would be in a mid-lot block. There's a large flat area at the back of the property that's raised, and it's perfectly suited for this pool and pool house, and it fits almost perfectly there. And it seems to me like it was either set up as some type of special playing field or could have been a previous pool. We've set the pool house back as far as we possibly can from the adjacent streets, and especially the side street, to minimize any of the impact. And you can see from the photos looking up the hill that it really does minimize that because it's so far back at that point. I want to say again that we have a lot of very mature evergreen and deciduous trees, and that we're not planning on affecting any of these trees. Our proposal nestles around the existing trees, and the pool house are not within the root structure of the major trees there. So the accessory structure set on the front yard and on a corner lot, we have 29 square feet that we're asking for as our variance. And it intrudes into that front yard by a total of 4.7 square feet. And on the blow up of the site plan here, you can see where that very, very small triangle is. It's for a flat piece of bluestone area, enabling us to walk around the pool. It's a very minimal intrusion. It's going to be totally screened with the landscaping and the fencing. For maximum accessory coverage on the corner lot, it's 7% required. We're proposing 8.6%, which is a 1.6% variance, or 907 square feet. And of that 700 square feet, of that 907 square feet, 700 square feet of accessory structure is part of those historic front patios that we can't do anything with. So there's not an area that we can continue to take out in order to reduce that coverage, but the overall building coverage for the property is almost 50% of what's required. And the lot coverage for the property overall is 8.6% under what is allowable here. So we are way under on that. So from a total building coverage perspective and lot coverage perspective, what we're asking for is very minimal and certainly complies with those overall coverages. The front yard fencing variance, I think that by bringing the fence from this point to here, where it's behind the evergreen screening from here, will be definitely not noticed at all. And by keeping it within the contours, instead of having to bring it back up the hill here, we're not running into other trees. We're not stepping it back at a diagonal where it's going to stand out on the property. And it means that we don't have to regrade this and probably lose these two huge trees here if we were to have to change the grade of this property to bring the fence back at this angle and slope all the grades around it. So in that case, by allowing the variance for the fence and screening it, it saves the large deciduous trees that are on this side of the pool area. The other thing to say about this is a one-story structure. It's a minimal yard structure. It's an open air structure. It's not an intensive use. There's a very large separation between the pool house, and all the immediate neighbors. Rich Keller is going to testify about that. It's being placed in the middle of the grassy area so that it has a minimal impact on this property. And this application was reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission on February 4th, and we received a unanimous approval for the design that we're showing you today. I'm going to let Rich Keller talk next and show you some of the overall site characteristics and things like that. And then I'll sum up if any additional information is needed. Thank you.
Well, first, let's see if there's any questions from board members of this witness. Are there any questions of this witness? I have one question. Maybe you covered it and I missed it. Are any of those big, tall trees on the property going to have to come down in connection with this proposed construction in the rear of this property?
We're not planning on them coming down, no. You can see that we intended to stay well away from the large trees here, from the very large tree on the corner, from the two that are back here. And by digging in the middle and not changing the grading, just making very, very minimal contour changes right at the edge, no, it's not going to have an impact on those mature trees.
Thank you. Any other questions of this witness? Can we take this document down now?
Yes. We can. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. James? Anyone in the audience have any questions for Mr. James? Anyone there, Eileen?
No.
The next witness.
Mr. Keller, you have to unmute yourself.
I've been doing about 10 of these a day, and I still do that. Rich Keller. I am a licensed professional engineer and planner. I take the oath and agreed to tell the complete truth earlier. By way of my credentials, I have been a licensed engineer and planner for the last 32 years. I hold a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Rutgers University with a declared concentration in environmental engineering and water resources. And I also hold a master's degree in architecture with a declared concentration in urban planning and design. And that is from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, where I was also an adjunct professor for approximately 11 years. I have appeared before this board, the planning board, all 23 communities in Essex County, approximately 110 communities throughout the state of New Jersey, as well as counties and municipal courts. I'm also currently the engineering consultant to the Planning Board and Board of Adjustment in the Township of Long Hill. And I have also provided planning services for the Borough of Caldwell for their Board of Adjustment in the past. My licenses are in good effect, all educational requirements met, and it's nice to get back to seeing the board. I haven't seen you guys in a couple months.
Your qualifications as an engineer and as a planner are accepted by this board.
Thank you, sir. I do John and I work a lot together. And whenever we work together, I like working with John because we share the same goals. We try to come in with variance-free applications. And when we have a variance application, we do our best to minimize the extent of the variances and to minimize any negative impact. I think this is one where John has done most of my planning testimony for me, but since the Bettmans are paying me by the word, I'm going to make sure I get a few comments in here and there. The property, and what I'd like to do is I do want to share the screen with an exhibit. So if I can do that right now, I will grab a drawing. This is an exhibit. I guess this would be A2, I believe. Is that correct, Rob?
So yes, Mr. Keller, so this has not been submitted to the board to date, correct?
That's correct. This is
Okay,
not submitted.
And so can you identify what A2 is, what it consists of, how many pages?
It's a single page. It is an aerial photograph, which was the photos taken from nearmap.com. It's a pay subscription service. The date of the photograph was March 21st of 2021. So it's less than, or just less than a month old. The property lines are taken from the Township of Millburn tax maps. And then we superimposed the architectural design on top of that. The nice thing about the near map photos is they are all to scale. So this is at a 1:40 scale. You can't use that scale, but it means that it's easy for us to drop the proposed elements in and get a realistic interpretation of where they sit and the impacts of the surrounding on the surrounding properties.
And I take it, as with Mr. James A1, that you will be submitting a copy of this to Ms. Davitt, correct?
I will tomorrow, and I'll also email you a copy for your use in any resolution that may be on.
Thank you, Mr. Keller.
Thank you. The property as indicated, I'm just going to window in here. The property as indicated by John is located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Minnesink Road and Highland Avenue. It's actually a 56,447 square foot lot, just under 1.3 acres. It's located in the R3 residential zone. So it's nearly double the 29,000 square foot that's required. So it's oversized. However, it is uniquely shaped in that it has that trapezoidal configuration where there's a large over 206 foot frontage along Highland Avenue that then throttles back and narrows as you move up Minnesink Road to where we only have 153 feet of depth off Minnesink. So that means when we apply that 80-foot setback, you can see that, and the 12-foot setbacks for the side setback required for accessory structures, you can see that it starts to define an area that is really in that unique plateau that John indicated. In addition to a hardship that's created by the geometry, there's also a hardship that's created by the location of the lawfully existing structures on the property. As indicated, my field crew goofed and they'll get reprimanded tomorrow, but yeah, there's a two-car garage that faces off to the west with a generous driveway for turning around, which really means to get access to that garage, you really can't pull that pool any closer to the existing home. You can't utilize any of the existing patios to service the pool. It really means that in putting the proposed pool up in the logical area, both topographically and what's left over between structures and zoning, you're placing the pool a fair distance away from the home and certainly the kitchen and any areas. So it also makes it logical. It's logical that because the pool has to be located so far from the home, that it's appropriate to have a pool house so that parents or guardians or anyone watching the kids can actually be in the open air covered portion, view the kids, because you really don't have a good connection. You can't get a good connection because of the location and configuration of the lawfully existing structures between the existing home and the pool. So it's really, you kind of come up one of the two stairs and you camp out and use the pool. And then when you're done, you lock the gates and everybody goes back to the main house. So there's so in addition to the geometry, there's also the location of the lawfully existing structures that creates a hardship. The as indicated by John, you're required on a corner lot to be 80 feet back from the street. We missed that by 4.7 feet, so we're 75.3 feet back. And it's only, I think John said about 37 square feet or possibly less, actually dips into that area. I would say, given the amount of mature landscaping that's visible, and this is winter landscaping, so you can see there's still a fair amount of evergreen materials that's blocking this area. And certainly from that distance, a flat surface that is not visible, you would have no way of perceiving that there was any variance required, that it didn't meet the 80-foot setback. We're not allowed to say de minimis, only attorneys can say that, but I think in this case, that deviation certainly might qualify. As indicated, we are, just to look a little bit at the neighborhood, in the placement of that, as indicated not by John, not only do you want the pool to be along that north-south axis, so the sun comes up and provides sun across the pool, and the pool house does not cast shade across it, it also is the logical place in terms of the neighboring properties. The Bodapudi residence, which is under renovation immediately to the north, we're backed up in an area that has heavy trees on their property as well as ours, and it's really in an area that's analogous to, they have a large patio they're going to be putting up in here to access the pool that remains. So our pool is sort of analogous to their pool in that area. If we look further to the west, you can see that the property is unusual at 17 Minnesink because the house is set very far back and there's very little of the house. There's one small window that faces this section of the property. Again, heavily landscaped, the driveway comes up. So we're really contiguous to the driveway, and the usable portion of the house really orients both back towards the back of the Bodapudi residence as well as the Feldman residence beyond, and really opens up into to the west, again, looking towards the sunsets. With regard to the other neighboring properties, you can see one thing you can see is the size of our cabana is really not very different than the sizes of other cabanas in the area. In fact, it's considerably smaller than some of the cabanas in the area. It's an area that has a number of pools that are existing. Our pool is really consistent with, and in some cases undersized as compared to some of the other pools in the area. But it's an area that it's not uncommon to have both cabanas and pools. So what we're asking for is not atypical. It's an element that's usual and customary to this section of the R3 neighborhood district. And it's also something that, given the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a great increase in the demand for pools because public pools really aren't going to be back for quite a while. So I think that it's a reasonable ask, not only is a reasonable ask, but it's really consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. And the placement of the cabana at the 12-foot setback, utilizing that flat area, really presents no negative impact to the neighboring properties whatsoever. It's really as far as you can get away from the properties on the other side of Minnesink, and yet we're nestled into either backyard areas or completely inert areas on the neighboring properties. As John said, corner lots come in all shapes and sizes, and this is a unique one because of that acute angle. We get a whole bunch of property in the front. Actually, more than half the property on this is in the front yard, and that leaves the area for putting accessory structures a relatively small portion of that property. I would point out that 7% of the 56,447 square foot is allowable for accessory coverage. That's 3,951 square feet. We're proposing 4,858, which is over by 907 square feet. So we're at 8.6, we're 7%. I would point out, if this were a standard lot with a front yard, side yard, and we regularized it out and I kept the house kind of where it's located, I'd do a lot that would be about the same size, 56,500, be about 230 feet wide by 245 feet deep, the same setbacks. That would net a rear yard of 30,407 square feet. Accessory structures in the R3 zone, as well as many of the residential zones in Millburn, you can go up to 20% of the rear yard area in accessory structures. That would be 6,081 square feet. So it's not atypical for a property of this size to have as much as have over 6,000 square feet in accessory coverage. In this case, we're at 4858, which means that we're under that by over 1,823 square feet. As indicated by Mr. James, we're also well under the metrics for lot coverage, where 35% is permitted. We're at 26.34. That means we're under total coverage by 4,889 square feet. FAR, 25% is permitted. That's 14,111. Our FAR is proposed at 11.96. That means we're under by 7,358 square feet. We're less than half of what's permitted in terms of FAR. So certainly the proposed development is not an over-intensification of the lot and really poses no negative impact as compared to other properties in the area. And as indicated by John, the 700 out of the 907 square feet that we're over by is represented by the 700 square foot that's in the front patio and a brick patio on the side of the house, which are virtually unusable for any kind of accessory uses. So really we're talking an excess of 200 square feet on a lot that could easily handle a lot more square footage. So we need variance relief. They fall under primarily C1 variances, but also C2 to some degree, and that being under NJSA 4055 D70 C1. And under C1 is when a hardship is created by either some physical feature of the property, as we indicated, the narrowness and shallowness of the property that's unusual shape, or through the location of lawfully existing structures on that property. If the strict application of the zone results in a peculiar and exceptional difficulty or hardship, the board can grant variance relief. The accessory setback is clearly a C1, where the lawfully existing property creates a hardship in forcing us to push the pool back, and therefore it dips into that front yard setback. With regard to the accessory coverage, again, this is a C variance where it's really the unique function of the lot, in that for a lot this size, it's really an under representation of the amount of coverage that will be permitted. And it's also further exacerbated by the fact that we have to keep those lawfully existing historic patios on the property. With regard to the front yard fencing, this is really a C1 and a C2 variance. So C1, again, where that location pushes into the smaller portion of the property, pushing fencing into the front yard, but also it represents a C2 variance. And under 4055 D70 C2, that's where the purposes of the Land Use Act are advanced, and the benefits resulting from the deviation outweigh any detriment or any potential detriment. It's also referred to as the flexible C variance, where the non-conforming proposal represents a better planning alternative to a conforming one. And as John had indicating, running that fence along the required front yard setbacks means that it would rise up from its lower position. It would cut up across the grade at a skewed angle to the improvements. It would be much more highly visible from the street, and it would necessitate either, if we want to keep it down low, significant regrading in that area, which would kill trees, or it would require a sort of an odd rising of that fence as it cuts up diagonally across the property and then meets the existing fence in the corner. Again, cutting through a location where I would cause more harm to the existing vegetation than the non-permitted orientation and location, which is parallel and perpendicular with the pool house, the pool, and at the bottom of those contours, as John showed on his plans. So clearly, we think that it is a better planning alternative to run at that point. Obviously, any variance relief needs to also meet the negative criteria, and that's well, first of all, let me just go back to that C2 portion. So the purposes of the Land Use Act appearing under 4055 D2 that are advanced is that the location of the pool house, and most importantly, the pool fencing, advances the aesthetics of the design of the property, and also general welfare, which is Section A. This allows accessory uses and amenities that are typical to the neighborhood, especially given the demand that we're seeing in the community as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then certainly this is protective of adequate air, light, and open space, both on the property and for the neighboring properties around us. Which brings us to the negative criteria for all three variances. And that's again in two prongs. The first is that we need to demonstrate that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, and that they will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. We think that there is no detriment to the public good. As indicated on our drawing, pools and pool houses are typical to the neighborhood. There's a large flat plateau that is perfectly suited for the pool and pool house, such that it cannot be seen or nominally seen from the street. It's hidden by existing landscape to remain. There are very mature evergreens both across the frontage, and the flowering trees are just starting to flower now, which means that they well hide the location of the front of the pool house, as well as the fencing. And then there's existing mature vegetation around the back, which limits the views to the neighboring residences, and that will all remain. The pool yard, the front yard fence is less visible at the base of the existing slope despite needing variance relief. The pool house is set back as far as possible to minimize any impact on the front yards. And again, it's a one-story structure in character with the main house. It's relatively low in scale. It does not go very tall, and it's mostly open air, with the center open air section with two small enclosed wings. So it has an open, breezy feeling to it and has less visual impact. If approved, a grading plan and drainage plan will be required to be provided to ensure that there are no adverse impacts associated with the development. We will provide dry wells and other forms of stormwater management to meet the requirements of both the municipal ordinance as well as the Soil Conservation Service. So if the board would approve it, we would certainly file for those permits and do that engineering work. We believe that our proposal advances the purpose of the zoning plan, and the benefits of the construction will outweigh both the pool and the additions, the pool and the pool house in the proposed location will substantially outweigh any detriment. We also believe that the second prong of the negative criteria, that there's no detriment or impairment to the master plan and zoning ordinance is met. Of the master plan goals and objectives on page 43 of the master plan re-examination, goal number 1 is to encourage appropriate land uses that promote the character of the township as a small suburb of the highest quality. And to protect, and objective 101 is to protect the character of established residential neighborhoods and encourage land use and development at an appropriate scale and density. We think that is a very low scale. It's an appropriate density. It's underdeveloped on the site. It's significantly under on lot coverage, significantly on building coverage, significantly under on FAR. And those are the primary metrics we look at in deciding whether a property is overdeveloped. And we certainly think it is not. We think that the improvements are consistent with the established character of the neighborhood. We think that we've met the burden of proof in terms of both the positive and negative criteria in support of the 3 C variances requested. And we ask that you approve it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of this witness? I see none from board members. Eileen, is there anyone in the audience who has any questions for this witness?
I am bringing over Greg Grunstra.
Mr. Grunster.
Good evening. I don't have any questions for the witness. I just do not want to miss my opportunity for public comment when the time is appropriate.
No, you will have an opportunity in a minute to comment. This is only for questions.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience who has any questions for this witness? Mr. Grunster, you have some comments? Unmute Mr. Grunster and let us have the benefit of your comments.
Can you please get on camera? Is that possible, Mr. Grunster?
On camera?
We need a camera. There we go.
Thank you, sir.
Oh,
Great. If you're going to provide sworn, if you're going to be providing sworn testimony, we need to swear you in.
Okay, do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in tonight's Zoom hearing to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth? State your name and address for the record, please.
Greg Grunstra, 2 Minnesink Road, Short Hills, New Jersey. I have the floor.
Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, other members of the board, council. I just want to, I'd like to start as an initial matter just by raising the board's awareness to the fact that we kind of learned by happenstance of the meeting today. We did not, I'd like the record to reflect that we did not receive formal notice from the applicant of today's meeting by certified mail or otherwise. I'm sure the applicants can probably show some proof of certification of mailing, but nonetheless, we did not receive any such notice. And as some of you may know, you can request from the United States Postal Service, faxed or, carbon copies of whatever mail is delivered to you. So I did my due diligence and went back from April 1st, rolling 7 days forward, and did not receive any notice from the Postal Service of any delivery of any certified mail regarding this application. So nonetheless, putting aside any procedural deficiencies that may exist, I'm talking to you tonight somewhat reluctantly. We had raised concerns over this application at the HPC and had unfortunately kind of expected that maybe the Bettmans would have reached out to us to try and address or talk to us about our concerns, but since no communication was forthcoming, I'm talking to you this evening. So to state the obvious, we see this as, certain deficiencies in the project as being improper, at least insofar as it relates to us. This is, a proposal for a pool and pool house to be constructed on a side yard, extending towards the front property line of the property on Minnesink Avenue. The house is not, as is most common in Short Hills, in a backyard, tucked behind a structure, not otherwise visible. And it's completely obvious from the fact that the variance being sought is for front yard setback, that this proposal is not tucked into the rear of the yard. It is not hardly visible. It is not completely concealed as the applicants would have you believe in their submission. If you look at some of the drawings that were submitted, you can see that the evergreen shield, if you will, or screen that the applicants speak to is on a de minimis portion of the front property on Minnesink Avenue. It is relegated to the house on 10 Minnesink. We are at 2 Minnesink. You can clearly see from our front stoop and various vantage points from our house the proposed site where the pool is to be constructed. There is a small ornamental row of deciduous trees that hardly block any type of view. I did not read the applicant's submission as suggesting that they were going to put in a visible barrier to block the view of the proposed structure from Minnesink Avenue. A small hedgerow of 4 feet is going to do very little to block a pool structure, umbrellas from visible pedestrian traffic on the street or automotive traffic, or quite frankly, from our house. I also, I don't believe the proposal for the fence is really in keeping with, the historic district of Short Hills. My understanding was that Stuart Hartshorn's vision was to have open properties, rolling lawns, and unobstructed views from fencing in the front property line. So, while I understand that over time, properties become subdivided, houses are developed, sometimes that vision can be blurred, but I don't think we should be blind to the fact that, the proposed structure with the fencing really does not fit with the aesthetic of the historic district. And, another concern which I want to raise, which, I believe, Mr. Kettler, if I got that right, Mr. Keller addressed, is that we didn't see any proposal, and I understand this is an engineering department issue, for stormwater runoff should the property proceed, should the proposal proceed. we have had, serious issues of stormwater runoff from all the construction that is going on, on Minnesink and up Highland. All the stormwater runs off onto Highland, comes down, crests Highland onto Minnesink, and then runs onto our property. So we would hope that that would be considered in connection with any application. And I would also hope that the board, if it has not done so, would do a site visit and make its own assessment as to whether or not the statements made by Mr. James and Mr. Kellner are in fact correct. And that, there is absolutely no detriment to the public good, that, that everything is going to be quote unquote lost in vegetation, that there's, complete screening and privacy, which I do not believe is the case. At the very best, those statements are disingenuous. At worst, they're just erroneous. Thank you.
Are you finished?
I'm finished.
Thank you.
Chairman.
All right, is there anyone else who has a comment he or she would like to make with respect to this matter? Anyone else out there, Eileen? Is there anyone from the applicant's side who has any comments he or she would like to make with respect to the statement that was made by the gentleman from number 2?
I would just like to say that I did check all the certified mailings, and notice was shown to me that all the required notices were postmarked. I believe it was April 1st. And this property owner was sent one as well. As I explained, I couldn't, we just require that they're sent. What happens once the post office gets them? Unfortunately, it's out of our control, but the applicant did submit proof of notification as was required to.
But from your point of view, the proofs have all been filed with you.
Yes.
Are there any comments from board members with respect to this application?
Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Keller had his hand up. He may have wanted to, or Mr. James, to
Mr.
respond to
Keller,
the neighbor.
I didn't see your hand up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I can, just to help the board understand, I just want to share the screen again so I can show where 2 Minnesink is located, just so everyone's clear. And so 2 Minnesink is the other corner property located roughly in line with our house, but actually twisted a little towards Highland. So certainly from the front stoop, you probably may see cutting through the deciduous trees up into that area, but it's probably 350 feet from the front door to the closest part of the pool, and probably closing in on 375 or something. I shouldn't give the exact dimensions, but I can get them for you. So it's a fair amount of distance away on an oblique angle where this really faces into the grove and in the large front yard of the property. But I also, since I'm an engineer and I care very much about drainage, I just wanted to indicate we've already located all the drainage infrastructure in Minnesink Road. We've already acknowledged that we're going to provide a grading plan. We're going to provide stormwater management. And it's our intent that we'll overflow any dry well water we pick up. There's existing storm sewer in both Minnesink and Highland that we'll be able to vent that to. So certainly, we'll meet the town standard, which is that in a post-development condition, we'll have less runoff than we have today. I understand that you do have the Bodaputi residents, the Feldman residents. There was another 2 doors up. There was another dwelling that was just completed about 2 years ago. and there has been some runoff of debris and soil and muddy water that's come down. I know that engineering, the assistant engineer tried to deal with that. That may be continuing on, but certainly our construction will be isolated away from that, and will certainly meet the requirements of both the Soil Conservation District and the Township Engineering Department. And we'd expect logically that if this board sought to approve that, that would be a condition of approval we'd be perfectly happy with. And I think John wanted to just wrap up and maybe address any other comments.
John?
I just wanted to say a couple of things. Runoff from current construction really isn't a penalty that should be put on the Bettmans. I've worked with Rich for many years. We've done many projects in Short Hills, and we don't have a reputation for any runoff from our properties to adjacent neighbors. So current runoff from construction shouldn't be put on this property. There really is no requirement to put screening around the front yard perimeter for a pool house. There's usually screening that you want near the adjacent neighbors in the back, and there's heavily mature screening all the way around. I totally disagree with the assertions that it isn't heavily screened. I have additional photographs I can show you from many sink that were taken earlier this week just for this purpose. If you want to see them, that show that you can't see into the site. You have pear trees there at approximately 8 to 10 feet on center. This has more mature screening in the front yard than many other properties around, and I think it's unfair to request that. The pool and the pool house are much further from this house than any of the other adjacent neighbors. The pool house is absolute as far as it could possibly be on this lot from the adjacent neighbor. And to assert that that's a wrong location simply because we have additional zoning requirements for a corner lot is wrong. We had the same conversation in front of the HPC committee, and they voted unanimously to approve the designs as they're submitted to you. And I feel like we've really taken the high road in what we're doing in screening here, and the the views from the street. If I
All right, board members.
Wait.
I mean, do you need to see additional photographs
Oh,
or?
that's fine.
Okay. Meaning yes, show them, or no?
I think that's enough.
Okay.
Board members, can I hear where your thoughts are at the moment? Anyone?
Well, can you guys hear me?
Yes, now I can.
So I could just begin by saying that, when I visited the property, it appears to me that the pool is really kind of, tucked away in the back corner, elevated up away from, certainly away from the street. I do think there might be some issues related to the privacy of the next door neighbor, but I think that was pretty covered. That was covered, I think, really in the testimony of the applicant's experts. So, I mean, it's a huge house. It's a big property. It appears to me to be able to support a pool and a pool house as proposed. So I could be in support of this application.
Anyone else?
Mr. Grunstra has raised his hand again, but I do not know if we are still.
No, we've heard from everyone in the audience.
Okay.
It's now the time for board members to make comments if they would choose to do so. If not, is there a motion?
I noticed that there's not an HPC, the text of the HPC approval of the resolution was not included in the application.
Yeah, I think John was gonna, do you have that, John?
We haven't received it. It hasn't been prepared, is
Yeah.
our understanding.
That was my understanding as well. That I don't think it's been prepared at this time.
We can submit the minutes if you want that. That's the only thing that's on your website.
Your testimony was that it was heard by the HPC and it was passed by them. Is that correct?
Unanimously.
Do you know what the date of that was? When did they receive HPC approval?
February 4th is when we had the hearing.
And I can confirm, yeah, I was in the HPC meeting. This was heard.
Is there a motion? Something, anything?
Move approval.
Who made that motion?
Jessica.
Jessica.
Jessica moves approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Steve Toger seconds.
Jody Sharma,
Yes.
Steve Toger,
Yes.
Wolfgang Tutoris,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence,
Yeah.
Chandru Harjani,
Yes.
Jessica Glatt,
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. Okay, the next case on our agenda is one of the cases that I spoke to earlier this evening. This is Brian Lau.
They've decided to carry until June 7th.
Pardon me?
They have decided to carry their hearing till June 7th when you have a
All
full.
right, let me make a formal announcement. Calendar 3793-21, 80 Cypress Street in Millburn. Applicant Brian Lau of 80 Cypress Street in Millburn. That matter will be carried without further notice or further notice to adjacent property owners to June, the meeting of this zoning board on June 7, 2021 at 7 p.m. And that meeting will be on a Zoom meeting.
We'll also need an extension of time, John, for decision.
Yes, John, can we get an extension
Till
of
the end.
time
Yes.
to June 30, let's say?
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, the last matter on the agenda tonight is the other matter that I spoke to the folks about earlier in the night. It's Corey and Jason Wilf at 30 Montview.
And they've decided to carry as well until June 7th when you have a full board.
All right, let me make a formal announcement. Calendar 3791-20. Property location 30 Montview Avenue. Applicant Corey and Jason Wilf. That matter will be carried without additional or further notice or in the newspapers or notice to adjacent property owners within 200 feet to the evening of June the 7th, 2021, to the meeting of this board, the Millburn Township Zoning Board of Adjustment, the evening of June the 7th, 2021 at 7 p.m. on a Zoom platform. I see no other property, no other matters coming before the board tonight.
I'm
Is
sorry,
there
Mr.
any-
Chairman, 1 second. Do we need an extension for the last application?
We need the same extension, yes.
Can we get an extension from the Wills?
Yes.
Mr. James,
Yes.
to June 30, 2021?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there any non-agenda items under new business to come before the board tonight? I see none. I've heard none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Amy Lawrence makes a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Wolfgang Tsatsouras seconds the motion. All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Stay safe, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
Good night.
Bill.
Good night.